When this sewage worker was tasked with solving a sewer clog, he expected a simple, routine job. Sewage clogs happened constantly, and he got rid of them often. But when he drained the water and saw this blockage, he turned pale instantly. He had no choice. He had to call the police. Before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. Stuart worked for one of the largest sewer draining companies in town. They were mostly busy with routine jobs that affected a couple of houses. But when he received reports of entire city blocks being pestered by blocked drains, he had no choice but to check underground. But he never could have expected this outcome. His employer sent Stuart down into the sewers by himself to see what caused the situation. They went down into the city's underground pipe system about once every month, so Stuart knew the tunnel system well. The first part of the pipe system seemed normal, but when Stuart ventured deeper, this blockage's source became clearer. Water and other fluids were piled up higher than he had ever seen before. What the hell? Stuart knew what he had to do. He ran back to his truck and used the extraction hose he brought to drain all this excess water away, not knowing that this would reveal a shocking hidden secret. A sizable greenish obstacle was clogging up one of the main tubes. The object seemed plastic in nature, like something people used for their inflatable pools. What is that thing? Stuart didn't fully know what he was looking at that point, but somehow the enormous object seemed familiar to him. The object was wedged in there pretty tightly, that much he could deduct, because not a single drop of water could get past it. Stuart already assumed that people must have tucked the giant balloon-like object in there, but the confused sewage worker still had no idea why someone would do that. Why would someone do this? After about 30 additional minutes, the water finally drained fully. A light bulb went off inside Stuart's mind. Of course, I know what this is, he spoke almost excitedly. It was an inflatable expansion device used for repairing broken parts of sewage pipes. Stuart's company owned almost all of these devices. They were all in their warehouse because none were currently in use. So, the confused sewage worker immediately checked their system database. On it, he could also check the stock of all rival companies. And that's when a shiver went down his spine. Not a single inflation device was in use in the entire town. And according to their database, no planned repair was ordered anywhere. Things were not adding up, and the more Stuart thought about it, the more suspicious he got. What if this particular expansion unit isn't used to support broken pipes? What if it was used to keep water and perhaps even unwanted people out? With this thought in mind, Stuart's nerves started growing even more. He didn't want to be down there by himself anymore. He needed to call the police. The phone operator was intrigued and surprised by Stuart's call for help and immediately agreed this situation needed to be investigated. He would send the 3 nearest officers to Stuart's location. Officers Stevens, Waddle, and Santiago were already waiting on him when Stuart arrived at his truck. The sewage worker didn't hesitate and told the officers to follow him. As Stuart guided them down, he explained the situation, but the officers were still surprised to see the cause of the blockage and immediately started their investigation. It didn't take long for the officers to agree this situation was weird. This was clearly placed here by someone for some reason. We should try to remove it. Officer Stevens, whose name was Tricia, said. She took the lead in the situation and asked Stuart if that was possible, considering he was the expert. Some unknown factors were at play because they didn't know when the device was placed or for what reason. Those were also why Stuart agreed that the blockage needed to be removed. We need to be careful because there could be a lot of water built up behind it, he said, agreeing on the plan. Stuart and the officers carefully tried to loosen the device. It was a meticulous and time-consuming task, but slowly they made some progress. When there was a big enough gap, Stuart instructed the officers to halt and used a device to measure the water pressure. "That's odd," Stuart said when he saw the readings. "What's odd?" Tricia asked with a mixture of confusion and worry in her voice. The sewage worker explained the water pressure on the other side of the blockage was very low. "It should be the opposite." There was only one explanation for this. "There are more blockades," Stuart said, his voice drenched in disbelief. Surprised by this discovery, the group stood in silence, trying to process the situation. Then Officer Waddle spoke. "I can only think of one reason someone would put up multiple blockades. They want to dry out a specific area in these sewers." Everyone stared at each other as they realized they stumbled onto something big. "We need to find out what is going on and who is behind this," Tricia said determinedly, and the other officers nodded. Then she turned towards Stuart, asking for his help. "We could use your expertise." He didn't hesitate as he wanted to know what was going on and agreed to act as their guide. Under Stuart's guidance, the group ventured further and further, and eventually, something changed. They kept hitting blockades, but they were set up at junctions. They were blocking one way but leaving the other open. The group agreed it was the best choice to follow the open pipes and where they lead. As the journey progressed, Stewart noticed the pipes were getting cleaner and drier as they walked. It made him realize the blockades must have been set up for a while, but they were also getting closer to whatever they were heading. He was about to tell the officers these thoughts when the sound suddenly started. Stewart's body froze when he heard them, and he looked at the officers with fright in his eyes. The officers tried to pinpoint where the noise was coming from, but it was reflected by the pipes, which made it impossible. The strange sounds gave the situation an eerie feeling, and Stewart became anxious and hesitant. Stewart was relieved to see Tricia take out her walkie-talkie and radio for backup, but "There's no signal down here. Looks like we're on our own," she said. The sewage worker didn't feel comfortable with that thought, as they clearly stumbled upon something big, and they would soon discover how right he was. "We're almost there," Stewart said with a slight tremble in his voice. The eerie noise was getting on his nerves, and he started to regret agreeing to guide the officers. But as they turned the corner, the group suddenly halted and stared at the incredible sight before them. "What the—" Stewart mumbled. The sewer pipe suddenly widened into a vast and spacious chamber, but that wasn't the surprising part. Stewart knew about the room as they had to cross it to get to the manhole. The surprising part was that he and the officers were staring at a chamber filled with high-end technology. "This wasn't here before," Stewart whispered, stating the obvious. Hesitant and carefully, the group entered the chamber. Their eyes were wide open as they looked around and noticed that electrical wires were broken open and connected to the devices. Whoever did this was deriving power from the buildings above ground. The group moved through the chamber, looking closely at all the technology. "What is this place?" Officer Santiago whispered, astonishment hearable in his voice. "It's some sort of observation post," Tricia said in disbelief when she arrived beside Stewart. The discovery floored the group. They all knew the blockades were placed for a reason, but none expected it to be for this. Who would do this and why? The officers immediately started looking for answers. Someone wouldn't do this with good intentions, so we need to figure out who is behind this and what their plans are before they can act on them, Tricia said before assigning everyone a quarter of the room to search. Stewart listened obediently and hurried to find clues so he could get out of there. "Look at this!" Officer Waddle suddenly exclaimed after a few minutes. Within no time, the entire group surrounded the desk Waddle was standing at. A small monitor displayed city footage, but everyone ignored it as they looked at the documents and files lying out in the open. "No way," Tricia mumbled. Stewart watched Tricia quickly scan the files, and her eyes widened with each page she turned. "It all makes sense now," Tricia whispered, disbelief drenched in her voice. But she quickly recovered and returned to her leadership role. "This is an incredible discovery. It's vital we call for backup right away," she said. She grabbed her portable phone and was glad she had a signal, probably due to all the wiring gathered in this area. But before she could send a message, the group suddenly heard footsteps approaching quickly. If those people noticed the group's presence, they would flee and never be caught. They had to hide. Stewart and Tricia hurry behind one of the monitor towers and hold their breath. Stewart heard the cop quickly signal 3 times with a radio and then turn it off. Right then, a group of 7 people entered the chamber, and Stewart prayed they had not heard or noticed them. The group entered the chamber from the other side, from where Stewart and the officer had come, so they passed very close by the stack of monitors Stewart and Tricia were hiding behind. The sewage worker was startled when one of the people suddenly spoke. "Is the path ready?" the person asked. There was no saying that the group was complete or others had yet to arrive. They had to at least wait for the one that just left to return. Still, there was no way for the officers to communicate with each other without the people hearing it. It was a real predicament. Stewart's mind raced as he tried to think of a way out, but then the group's conversation caught his attention. They discussed their plan and talked about which jewelry stores and banks were their best options. Stewart's heart pounded in his chest as he realized these were some bad people. Sweat broke out, and he tried his best to remain calm, but slowly, panic took control of his body. Tricia gestured for him to stay quiet. "I will take care of this. Trust me," she whispered very softly. Stewart nodded anxiously and tried to remain silent so they could hear the people's conversation. The conversation then quickly changed to everyday subjects until the man Stewart and Tricia presumed was Roger came with a panicked look on his face. "There's something wrong. One blockade has been destroyed and another has been moved." The criminals stood up from their seats and moved toward Roger for an explanation. Then the group of criminals gathered at the same spot. Stewart was startled by Tricia's voice. "Now," she yelled as she suddenly came out of her hiding place and gestured for other officers to follow. They quickly appeared beside her, and together they approached the criminals, demanding them to remain calm and surrender. Stewart stared at the scene with wide eyes. He was very nervous, as the criminals were with double the amount of people as the officers. But the officers were well equipped and had the element of surprise on their side. The criminals quickly realized the best thing to do was surrender. all except for one. Stewart guided Tricia toward the exit, but when they arrived, they saw it was barricaded off by a police unit arresting Roger. They had set up around the sewers when Tricia signaled for backup. Every criminal was arrested and soon sentenced to prison, but the story would be nationwide news. Because after the arrests were made, the police finished the investigation and figured out exactly what the criminals were planning, and the media closely followed the trial. The group was planning to rob multiple jewelry stores and banks across the city at the same time by using the sewer system. The criminals created a clear path through the sewage system by blocking off certain pipes, for which they used inflatable repairing devices they had stolen from one of the sewage companies. They could use that path to move quickly and unseen through the city, while stealing from the jewelry stores and banks above the sewer system. Luckily, the criminals' plans were thwarted by Stewart and the police officers, who were first responders to the call. Through their teamwork and instinct that something huge was at play, they managed to ensure the city's safety. And for that achievement, the mayor's office awarded them a Medal of Honor.